Okay, so we're going to get started here. I just have a few quick announcements. I want to welcome everyone back. I hope you all had a chance to enjoy a little bit of summer. AI Horizons took a short break over the past few weeks, but we are back and excited to kick things off again with another great session today. And we also have another fantastic session already planned for August, so keep an eye out for that announcement. As always, thank you all for being here and for continuing to make this community such a fun and collaborative space. It's been really cool seeing AI Horizons continue to grow year after year. Um, I also wanted to share a couple of quick community updates about the online space. If you haven't already, please take a look at the new Start Here page in our team's community. As AI Horizons continues to grow, we've added a bit more structure just to help everyone navigate the space and find what you're looking for. You'll notice we've added several new channels, including dedicated spaces for Penn State Enterprise and supported AI tools like AI Studio, Copilot, the new Google tools, Gemini, Notebook LM, and Adobe Firefly. Those channels are great places to ask questions, share tips, or showcase how you're using those tools. If you do have a specific question about a tool's not working, we do ask you that you submit an IT ticket, and we have that information pinned in AI Horizons as well. We also launched a new events and opportunities channel. We've been seeing a ton more AI-related webinars, workshops, events happening all across Penn State. So this channel is intended to serve as a central place to share those opportunities with the broader community. So if you're hosting something AI related, we'd love for you to post it there. I already saw we have a few posts in there already, so check out what's happening and seeing if you can see if you can join any new AI webinars or events. Okay, so before we dive into today's presentation, I want to provide a quick disclaimer about the tool you'll be seeing today. Today's session focuses on VisibleAI, which is not a Penn State enterprise tool. It is listed as approved courseware, but it is currently categorized as action needed for authorization. Meaning, if you do like this tool and you want to use it in your course, instructors do have to complete a few extra steps before using it in your tool. The purpose of today's session is not to recommend or endorse the platform, but rather to highlight the work of Penn State faculty who have piloted the tool in their own teaching and are generously sharing their experiences, what worked well, what they learned, and what they encountered, where they encountered opportunities and challenges. This presentation was originally delivered at the Penn State AI Teaching Summit at Harrisburg in May, and we felt it was an excellent example of the innovative experimentation happening across the university, and we wanted to elevate those faculty, those experiences to the broader AI Horizons community. Um, One of the core goals of AI Horizons is to create a space where we can learn from one another, pilots and experiments, real world classroom experiences, whether with Penn State supported tools or just emerging technologies, I think help all of us make more informed decisions as AI continues to evolve. So, sharing these stories is an important part of building our collective knowledge and advancing AI literacy across Penn State. And with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters, who Karen Stylianides, Associate Teaching Professor of Kinesiology, Health and Human Development from Penn State Hazleton. Megan Baril, Associate Teaching Professor of Human Development and Family Studies from the College of Health and Human Development. And Elizabeth Womack, Associate Professor of English from Penn State Brandywine. So please join me in welcoming them to AI Horizon. So take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out with your summer here to join us today. We really greatly appreciate it. And was just talking to Beth and Megan, and we're really excited about sharing our knowledge and background on using Critic. So I wanted to just start off really quickly because I adopted Critic several years ago when it was just Critic, and now it's kind of morphed into Critic 360. And then from there, it branched off to VisibleAI. So it just kind of pulled a little bit off of their website. You can go to their website and find more information. It's my understanding that come this fall, Critic will now go from Critic 360 and Visible AI blended together. And I'm not sure if they're just going to call each other, the whole thing Critic or not. But there are a couple of different nuances within Critic 360. I started off with 360. Visible AI is pretty new. If you have extra questions about Critic 360, just let me know. I'll hang out after the presentation and answer the question. But we are primarily going to talk about Visible AI. Beth and Megan and I, we piloted Visible AI, and we just want to share our story about Visible AI and what we liked about it. So Megan here is going to get started. So take it away, Megan.
Thanks, everyone. Really happy to be here with you today. Just as a quick follow-up to what Karen said, you can use Visible AI and not use Critic. So I have no experience with Critic, and I've just used the Visible AI. So while they're from the same company, you can just use this Visible AI component. So just wanted to say that as we begin. So one of the best things about this software from the 2 semesters that I've used it is that it creates a lot of transparency for students and faculty around the writing process. The first thing that it really provides transparency about is how students are using AI, what they're prompting, what kind of output AI is giving them. So all of that is tracked and kept in the platform. And then the other thing it gives visibility for faculty is the students' writing process. So did they sit down and cram out a paper in 20 minutes, or did they outline and draft over the course of the week to the point that they got their finished product? We all know that in this world of Gen AI, we used to be able to look at a student's submission and have a pretty good understanding of their learning and comprehension and critical thinking. And now that is much harder than it used to be. And so the fact that it tracks the process of students writing, for me, is one of the biggest benefits of this software. I can tell you the feedback that I've gotten from students is that they also really appreciate the transparency. I think that there are a lot of students on our campuses who are really scared that they're going to be accused of using AI inappropriately by their faculty. And the feedback I've gotten is that the transparency of Visible AI really takes that down a notch and helps students relax in terms of their assignments that they're submitting. So it's beneficial for both students and faculty in that. Next slide. Visible AI at this point is not something Penn State has bought a license to. And so there is a cost to students. It's about $30. And so just know that if you use this tool, that is about how much students will have to pay to use it. So when you log into your Visible AI screen, you will have the different courses that you've set up for students to use Visible AI. So this is my home screen. You can see I used it in a family development course in this spring and in this summer. So in that way, it's kind of set up like Canvas, where you have your different courses that you have your assignments set up in. Next slide. And then a student will click into their course, and then there's a list there of all of the assignments that you are asking students to use Visible AI on. Now, for me, I have them use it for about 6 assignments. Because I'm asking them to pay $30, I want to use it on enough assignments for it to be worth it. But you could choose to have them use it on one or every assignment or anything in between. So this is kind of the amount that I have students using it in this course. So when a student clicks on one of these assignments, this is the gist of what Visible AI is. There's 2 components. Oh yeah, you can go to the next slide, Karen. So there is a word editor on the left. This is nothing too fancy, just like you would see if a student was completing an assignment in Word. And when I give a Visible AI assignment, I tell students, do all of your work here in this platform. I don't want them working in Microsoft Word and copying and pasting in, because again, when they work in this platform, we can kind of see the process of their work. So the left side of the screen is the word editor. And on the right side of the screen is the AI assistant. And what this saves for us is the prompts that students used, the output that it gave, and then you can see how students are or aren't using that output or that back and forth with AI in their final writing assignment. The AI assistant can look at what the student is writing on that left-hand side and can address things that are going on in that writing. For example, I think you have a flaw in this argument or a gap, or have you considered this? So this AI assistant and word editor really work back and forth together. Next slide. When a student submits an assignment, a report is generated, and this report is visible to both students and faculty. This may kind of look like a Turnitin originality report if you've ever used Turnitin, and it is similar, except that it tracks different types of information than a Turnitin originality report. So the report will include the percent of the paper that is just straight up AI content. That's what the pink represents. It will track the amount that was pasted from another source. So let's say a student opened a website, copied and pasted, and put something directly in their paper, that's tracked. It tracks the percent that is original content that the student wrote. This blue section is the amount of AI content that was revised. So let's say in the assistant, they put a prompt in, they copied something into the paper, but they worked with it, rewrote it. That is also counted in this report. And then there's the word count and the total time spent. You can see that last bar on that right-hand side. I will tell you, and this is probably not surprising to any of you, that the time spent is really informative. Now let's say a student opened an assignment, typed a sentence, and walked away for 3 hours and came back. It does not say that they worked on that assignment for 3 hours. So it really is just the time that they're spent working with that AI assistant and typing up their paper that is counted there. Not surprisingly, those who spend longer on their papers tend to do better. But it really is interesting to see that when we're looking on the data of a student's assignments once they submit. So next slide. So when you're setting up an assignment in VisibleAI, there's components to it that are very similar to how you would set up an assignment in Canvas, and that you have your text box where you put the descriptions. And then you have different settings you need to set. And this can look different for every assignment. But one of the things you're setting is the AI threshold. So you can say students are not allowed to copy and paste or use AI in that assignment and set that threshold at 0. And you can set it anywhere up to 100%, where it's basically they can use AI in any way that they want. The reason that I find this so helpful is that you can use this in different ways. So let's say you're really trying to have an assignment that is AI resistant, where you really want the student to do their own thinking and learning and writing. You can set that threshold at 0. On the flip side, if you're trying to teach some kind of AI literacy skill, like prompting, how do you effectively prompt AI? You can set that higher wherever you kind of want that percentage to be. So it gives you the ability to both have like AI resistant assignment and also on the flip side, teach AI literacy. So that's some of the settings that you set. Next slide. Another thing that you set for each assignment is how you want that AI assistant to interact with students. So the VisibleAI draws on some of the big hitters for these Gen AI models. And you have 3 choices for where you set your AI assistant. So you can set it at default, which is pretty much just like any, if we went to any of these websites and started typing what the kind of output you would get. I tend to select this guiding option because when you select guiding, the AI assistant is operating more along the lines of a tutor or a coach, asking questions, helping them think more deeply about what they're writing. And then the third option is researching. So if you have some type of research assignment that you are having students do, you can also set the AI assistant to interact in more of a research-oriented way. Okay, next slide. I wanted to show you this writing process data that you get from VisibleAI. So this would be an instructor screen of a student's submission. So you can see this right bar of all of these icons on the right. You can click on them and they do different things with respect to the student's submission and what you see. But if you click on this circle towards the bottom, it helps us see the student's writing process. So you can see this is a student in my class who you can see accessed this assignment on April 20th at 1:10. This writing on the left-hand side is my assignment description. So the student hasn't done this work. This is just what I'm asking them to do. But I can see when they initially accessed the assignment. Next slide. You get to toggle that bar over, that horizontal bar. You can go to the next slide, Karen. Yep. And you can start to see, okay, this is a few hours later, and the student started to enter some references. And then, because she had gone to the library and found some sources, and then you can see the student starting to outline and starting to type. And next slide. And then they're starting to write their assignment. Yep, and that you can toggle that all the way over to the point that they submit. This is fascinating to see for students because you will see a handful of students who are very thoughtful in outlining, writing, drafting, editing. And then you will see a handful of students that somehow magically have this perfect paper typed top to bottom without any of those other steps of the writing process. So this just really allows you to see how students are writing throughout the week on that assignment. Okay, next slide. Now, one of the things that is really helpful that this AI report gives you, you can see under this white box that says original content, you also have this little line that says % of likely AI generated content. And this is really helpful. And what this catches is, let's say, we all know that students do their work with their phones next to them. So let's say a student pulled up ChatGPT on their phone, entered in the assignment description, and ChatGPT wrote a paper for them, and they just sat and typed it in. That is where that would get caught in that likely AI generated section. So I just wanted to point out that that is in there, and I find it very helpful. So if I have a class of 30 students, I may see 3 or 4 papers that have a very high likely AI generated score. And then when I go to that writing process bar, these are the students who write these magical papers top to bottom without any editing. So when I see those two things, then I'm likely to ask the student to have a meeting with me just to talk about how they wrote that assignment. So I just wanted to point out that that is also built into VisibleAI if they're using AI on a different platform. Okay, next slide. And the other thing that is saved, you can see here on the right, is everything that the student did in the AI assistant. The prompts they used, the output they used. This is really helpful if you're trying to teach any kind of AI literacy skill, is what they're prompting, what it gave, how they responded to that, and back and forth. Now that come fall, we're going to be asked by the provost to start teaching AI literacy in some of our classes. This is a really helpful component. Before VisibleAI, I tried in the fall to have students copy and paste output into a Word document, and it was just clunky and so time consuming. VisibleAI makes that really streamlined if you want to look at how students are using AI and the output that it's giving them. Okay, next slide. So when an assignment is due, let's say an assignment is due Sunday at midnight and you go in Monday, VisibleAI will give you this big table of all of the analytics on students' assignments. Now, I did not include students' names on this screenshot, but students' names would be on the left. And then all of that data that it captures, time spent, number of AI prompts they used, word count, their authenticity score, all of that is really easy to look at in this big grid that you will see once students have submitted their assignment. So this makes it, again, really easy and streamlined to see what the class was doing over the course of the week on the assignment. Next slide. The last thing that the VisibleAI does is there are built-in rubrics and you can grade in VisibleAI. Now, Karen, Beth, and I all at this point do not use these rubrics or grade in VisibleAI until that integration into Canvas is all complete. It's a little bit clunky to do that. So what I do is I have on one screen my VisibleAI course and the assignment I'm grading, and then I have another screen where I have Canvas rubrics, and I give all my feedback directly in Canvas. However, if you wanted to grade in VisibleAI, you could. It does have that opportunity to have rubrics and grades built in. So to end my time, I just want to show you a prompt, which is one of the ways that I have used VisibleAI in my classes as I think through trying to teach prompting to my students. Someone shared this prompt with me in the fall, and it really opened my eyes into the ways that we can help students learn how to prompt and use AI in a way that really can help their thinking and learning more than just doing all of the thinking for them. So I just want to share this with you. I give this prompt to students in week 1 as they're learning what Visible AI is. And I tell all students, this is the prompt I want you to start with in Visible AI. So copy and paste it in. And then based on the output, you can see how students then go back and forth based on this first prompt. So I just want to read it to you as an idea to potentially spark something, because this prompt could be applied in lots of different ways. So just says, I'm a college student in a 300 family course in HDFS. My instructor is using Visible AI and I'm trying to learn about it. Act as my personal coach. Ask me questions that help me reflect on this platform, both for instructors and students. Help me understand downsides and what I can do about it. On all of these topics, challenge my assumptions, deepen my thinking, and help me think through why this platform may ultimately serve my own learning. So I have used different variations of this across assignments, and I can just tell you, it really does shift the tide of teaching around Gen AI to really helping students learn to use it in a way that supports their learning and thinking. So I'm going to end here and pass it off to Beth.
Hello, Megan, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I love your prompting. You're so good at thinking through that, and that's the kind of the next stage for me. So I'm in my second semester of using Visible AI in that I'm teaching business writing right now, English 202. And I also used Visible AI for the first time in the spring for English 15. So I'm still kind of new to this platform, but I love it. I have very emotional feelings about teaching and writing because I'm one of those moody English professors that wears caftans and asks my students, do you ever think about death? So, like AI gets to all of these core like existential issues for like, why did I bother to learn to write? And so my feelings get hurt very easily by students who don't share my values around that. And so one of the problems that I've had since ChatGPT has really become so overwhelmingly present is I'm really having to confront like all of these deeply personal core issues while I'm grading a teenager who's they're just trying to get on with their lives. So all these emotions that are really heavy. And it was really such a barrier with my students because I think probably what we've all seen is like the use of AI has kind of gotten to where it's so hard to even know what cheating is. It is so omnipresent. It is so, somebody just popped up asking what the license costs. Are you asking for Penn State? For students, it's $30. I don't know if you missed that earlier. Penn State doesn't have a license yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I really felt like this software, it's not a perfect solution. But I was able there were students that I had in my class in the spring who a semester previously, I would have given them the stink eye so hard for how I reacted to their writing. And I would have had a damaged relationship because of my own issues with AI pros. And because of Visible AI, I was able to appreciate how actively they were working with AI and how deeply they were thinking in a way that was different than how I think. And so I don't know, I learned a lot. I hope the students learned a lot. So here's one of the ways that I used it practically. I thought it was really great for scaffolding assignments. So Megan showed everyone the progress bar where you can kind of watch the essay evolve. And one of the problems with writing pedagogy, especially online for a while, has been how do we teach students not to write everything the night before? How do we teach them writing as a process so they don't get overwhelmed? And how do we keep all of those little steps from turning into busy work? And students really hate feeling like all of these little steps are just pointless wastes of their time. Like that's really how they feel about all these little homework things. And what I like about Visible AI, since the whole thing becomes a process and that document can change and you can still recover each stage of that process, is they can have a single document that they open up in every class and that they work on at home. and they can write and they can delete and they can experiment in class and delete. And I can recover each of those stages. So when I give them an essay in my class, so we're gonna read this essay, take some notes on it at home. We're gonna come to class, we're gonna talk through it in class, we're gonna write some things on the board, type the things on the board in your paper. This is how you take notes. So they can take notes in the paper and VisibleAI. And then they can experiment with a paragraph, show me that in class, and they can just sort of keep working on that and then type over it naturally without having to turn in 10 different assignments on Canvas that I then have to manually go in and grade, and they have to remember to submit. Because one of the things that I've noticed is students with poor executive function just really struggle to hit all those little Canvas things. Like, do you ever look over your student's shoulder and see what Canvas looks like for them, where they have 5 classes and it's just this unending spool of dread of all of these little things? And some of them are major assignments and some of them are little teeny assignments, and it's just kind of overwhelming. So I liked the simplicity that essay 1 isn't 10 little assignments. It's just one thing that we open up over and over again. So I thought that was pretty wonderful. And so you can just sort of scroll through and be like, what did they do in class on Tuesday? What did they do in class on Thursday? And that can be part of my final grading process. So I thought that was more elegant for them, and it's more fun for me. So I can see their little stages of their draft where they're like, type something stupid here, and their little comments. So next slide, please. So part of what we're doing is trying to define and avoid plagiarism. And I do not like to be a cop. That's why, I appreciate our people who serve as first responders, but in my class, I don't like to be a plagiarism cop. That's just not my vibe. I would rather let some students get away with it than catch every single one. And to some degree, I think the software does kind of put the burden of that on them, and I'm not thinking about it quite as much. Megan did a wonderful job of showing how you can use the different features of VisibleAI to check your gut on each of those assignments. But I thought I would talk through what I saw in English 15. And so the students in English 15 are usually freshmen. They're straight out of high school. Many of them are not, they're not subtle. They're academic integrity violations. They're sweet babies, and they don't know how obvious some of it is. So some of it is very straightforward. I do have students who will just straight up copy and paste a paper into VisibleAI, and then the whole thing lights up and you can see they spent 20 seconds on the assignment, and that's very straightforward. Megan talked about the problem of students who will type something up in a different word processor and then copy and paste it in. And I just tell my students, remind them over and over again, I will treat this as plagiarism. So just don't do that. But most of what students are doing is pulling something up on their phone or in another browser window and then typing that in. So what you will see when you play the process bar and watch the essay evolve is that the essay just composes itself linearly, and all of the punctuation is there. And then at the end, the only tweaks that you'll see will be like they'll fix a couple of typos at the end. And at that point, if, as Megan pointed out, if they spent very little time, then you can go back and have a conversation with them. So at least in the spring, by February, I had already had 6 conversations with different students about. So it looks like what you did was to pull up something and just type it in, and all of them said, "You got me." So I didn't actually have to go through much with them, and I didn't have to have hostile conversations. I just said, here's what it looks like. Can you comment on that? And they made some course corrections. I really liked being able to see linear versus recursive writing and talk about that in a more in a way that was more about supporting their learning, but it certainly is a tell. I did also think the AI check was pretty valid. Some of those AI checker things, I think, if I put my writing in, it thinks it's AI. So I don't always trust those tools. But this one usually supported my gut. I wouldn't ever use it as documentation, but it's a good thing to use when you're talking to students. Next slide, please. So things that I thought were really useful. Megan talked about being able to watch that process. What I think is really cool is being able to show that process in class. So as a writing teacher, I have always put student work on the board and we talk about it and brainstorm about how it could be better and how it could change. And sometimes I'll do this with a big Google Doc that we're all writing in, and sometimes I'll pull in individual student work. So I always tell them, I will put stuff on the board. We will talk about it. I will never, ever put a student's work on the board and say, look at how much Tina's essay sucks. You know, that's not something I would do. But I love putting good student work on the board and talking about what's great about it. And so previously, I've only been able to do that in a very static way, like look at Tina's finished product. But now what I can do is I can put the essay on the board and say, like, I want you to look at how Tina's process evolved. Because one of the things that I really notice between strong students and weaker students, for the most part, is that a lot of weaker students don't really understand how that process can work for them. It feels like busy work. It doesn't feel like a consistent flow of learning and progress. And so when they see how those other students are thinking and working, they do have more of a window into what the gap is between them and what their students are doing. I already mentioned that scaffolding is less tedious and fiddly for students, so I appreciate that. I don't know that they feel that it is worth the $30 yet. I am still sort of negotiating that. I am inspired by Megan's prompt. I will be doing that in late August, so thank you for that. I do love seeing how they're using AI in either passive or active ways. So without me doing a lot, I would say out of a class of 24 students, 22 of them are asking for synonyms, asking for the word count of their paper, asking how to cite a source, and then they can say things like, please write me a conclusion or something like that. And so I will see that. I think some of the better uses are, what are some different ways I can say this? What I love is the conversation where a student will be like, how do I say this person is dumb as a bag of rocks in a polite way? And then ChatGPT. And I like seeing some of their spiciness come through when they trust the AI and trust me enough to do that. And sometimes I kind of wish they put that version in their papers. But I do see some good uses of it. There's some others who are really teaching me about using AI more creatively, where they're taking prompts and putting them back in and sort of refolding AI on itself in some creative ways that are making me a little bit less hostile to AI than maybe I was before. I'm still hostile to AI. I accept that it's here and we're learning with it, but I don't like it. But these students have helped me see some ways that it does help them think. Maybe it's not useful for me, but it is good for them. And I appreciate getting to see their conversations. And finally, as Megan said, I'm just getting so much out of seeing how much time they're spending on their papers. It's the simplest possible function of the software. But at the end of term, I had a student who was making one of those desperate attempts to pass, and he kept telling me how hard he'd been working. And I've always, throughout my career, had these conversations with students who would tell me how much time they were putting in, and I just didn't understand. And now I could just be like, Jermaine, you spent 20 minutes. and I think it wasn't clear to me if my students knew that 20 minutes wasn't the same, but what I could tell them is, like, I could say, like, the average class time spent on this assignment to get a B or B minus, it's like 3 hours. And what's your schedule like? How much are you practicing baseball? What's going on at home that you don't have this much time? Do you not have access to a computer? So just that data of like how much time they're spending, it doesn't tell me why they're spending that little information. I wouldn't want to assume that, I'm not going to stick a lazy label on a student, but something's going on that means that they are shortchanging themselves. And it's nice to have that information. Final slide, please. So my takeaways were things that I learned, and I've sort of talked about how ChatGPT has hurt my feelings in a lot of ways as somebody who just loves words and loves manipulating words. And I don't like emails, but I can't imagine wanting to outsource email because I love crafting a diplomatic response. And sometimes I love crafting a passive aggressive response, where like you're going to say nothing that could get you fired, but you're going to make sure that tone gets across. Like I love all of that stuff. And my students sometimes do and sometimes don't. And so I really had to like figure out a way to have empathy. And this platform has been really good for that. It's been good for talking to students about how much time they're investing. It's been useful for talking to them about how scaffolding can be not just busy work, but part of one process. I've just really appreciated all these insights because I feel like what AI has done is it has really just dropped this curtain between me and my students' minds and how they work. And this has opened up some of that again. So thank you so much.
Okay, it's my turn here. So, Karen Stylianides from Penn State Hazleton. I used Kritik in all of my classes, or a majority of my classes, but I primarily piloted VisibleAI in my Wellness Theory Kines 81 class. And so I kind of like to call my VisibleAI my 24/7 teaching assistant. So I teach a general ed class, and currently I have just 3 discussions because I'm using Kritik. I can I didn't have to focus all on VisibleAI, so I did a combination of things. So I made it worthwhile. And I just wanted to address the cost really quickly. If when I first adopted Kritik, they were saying that if you use open educational resources, students typically don't mind paying the $30 for Kritik or for VisibleAI. It's when they have those compounding, I have to pay for the textbook and it's $180, and I have to pay for the lab and so that's the thing, and it's typically across the board for the students. So let's just say we were all on the same campus, and I adopted VisibleAI. Beth adapted it, and so did Megan. The student is not going to pay $30 for each and every class that they take. They're going to pay a set amount of $30 then to use it for that semester with all their classes. I know that can be an issue with some of the students. I had, my son's now graduating from Penn State with a PhD, and it was like, I have to pay for the same software in 3 different classes, so just want to let you know that Kritik will work with you, and it will be one set price for the students if your department or your campus wanted to move forward with that. You just need to talk to Kritik and have a conversation. UPark actually has Holly, who is their Kritik representative, and she would be more than happy to talk to you. I usually communicate with Dave, and we had his information on the second slide, so I forgot to mention Dave from Kritik on that. So back to using VisibleAI in my classes. Like I said, I teach the Wellness Theory class, and it's a 3-credit class. I have 3 discussions that actually it's 4 discussions, but 3 real discussions. The first discussion is usually an introduction, kind of like what Megan does. So I have a particular prompt that I want them to go into, and then in class, I take class time to do that. We experiment with using the AI and how we can kind of come up with things. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we go through this a little bit. So as you can see, we kind of have a motivational kind of thing on wellness theory in our discussion. 65% of the people were using it, and they were experimenting with it. They would see what they liked and what they didn't like. And then in discussion 2, we went over longevity and blue zones and kind of started to decrease here. And then finally, the last discussion we used was on health insurance, and it dropped down as well. So some takeaways here are, as you can see, there was a high usage in discussion 1. I was kind of supervising them as well and making sure that they understood the expectations, could read the rubric, the tone of the formatting. And like Beth, I'm going to try to do more prompting a little bit better, like Megan did, coming up here in the future, because I think that this theme is starting to come up, as we move forward with Visible AI. And then once they kind of got to understand the usage of it, I'll show you why the percentage dropped down. So my students are so worried about their word count. So if you say you need 250 words for this, for the word count, it is like my goal is to get to 250 words. And so this is a really good opportunity for me to tell them that this is kind of like C. 250 words is a C average on your word count. If you want to be excelling and doing better, you're going to have to go past that 250 words. So in my usage, I had a lot of students that were going back, and that was the primary reason they were using it. What is my word count? How many words do I have on here? So it just kind of has to deal with the students starting to be in college, starting to understand what a word count is. And I feel like the scaffolding is happening because it's a gen ed class. I'm preparing them for other classes in higher ed. So anyway, that being said, the next thing, my sister's calling. Proofing and grammar, the students always go back in and they're taking a look at, how is my grammar going? What am I actually deficit in with my grammar, things like that. And then finally, they ask questions that I like. These are the ones that I like. So they're asking the question, what is blue zone? So they're starting to understand, if they are understanding what my terminology that I want them to know about is actually being presented in the discussion. What is the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic? We kind of talk about those things. So as students are coming to college here, they're probably not getting the terminology that I'm presenting to them. So I'm hoping that they're understanding it by using VisibleAI in order to understand that. And then they're always going back and making sure that they're, did I do this correctly? What are all the prompts? Did I answer all of the questions that the prompts had? What do I need to answer? What I need to not answer? And then I also had some interesting questions with my discussion 3. That was the healthcare one. So the students were using AI to troubleshoot with the learning management system inside itself. Why can't I paste what I did outside of this? Why doesn't it let me to paste the URL? And again, it's kind of one of those things that we've designed this particular software so it has limitations. So I want them to make sure that they're using their words and they're actually doing the research outside if they need to, but using their word within the software itself. And then some key insights and observations that I have right now that I wanted to share with you is they were really asking AI to write their papers for them. So this is something that we're starting to see more often, is the AI writing. And I sit on the academic integrity committee itself, so I kind of see some of the issues that faculty are having with AI and how you can actually discover if somebody has used AI and plagiarism in their work. It's not as easy as it used to be. That being said, whenever I have something like this happens, just like Megan does, I pull them inside and I really don't say anything because we've already talked about, AI and the percentages that I'll allow and I won't allow. I'm just basically putting the paper in front of them and saying, explain this to me. Why is it saying that it's a 90% AI and not human? That's all I do. Explain this to me. And then now I put the ball in their court. The ones that really did use AI are the ones that are saying, yes, I used AI in order to do this. And then you have that conversation, that teachable moment, why was this going on and stuff like that. So that's how I'm using it. I like to look at it as a coach and helping them, or an assistant helping them in the scaffolding process for writing. I have seen over the years that the writing responses I've received, it's so much nicer. I nails on the chalkboard when I'm reading a reply with lowercase i's. I mean, lots of texting, they're still doing that. But now those lowercase i's are starting to diminish, and I'm not seeing them as well or as much because they're asking Visible AI to kind of check their grammar in regards to that. Some basic prompt usage, as you can see here, they do use incorrect grammar when they're doing that, but the AI does kind of do the heavy lifting and it brings it back in and it understands what they're actually saying. Like I see a lot of lowercase i's, like I said, and capitalizations. So just kind of going along with this as well, I think that the cycle that we're seeing with using Visible AI for my classes and my students is they're writing a little, checking their word count, because that's very important, and then checking for grammar, writing a little bit more, checking the rubric, and it's just a cycle that's going round and round. And that's what we want. That's the scaffolding that I want my students to do. So they're actually, you know, working through what they actually want to. And sometimes when we write in a discussion, we have our initial thoughts that we put down, and then you kind of reread and kind of research a little bit more. And now we're tweaking what we really want to say in that one. The other thing I wanted to touch base on is citations. Now that I'm looking for more citations. I have it memorized I need to have my APA citations on everything. So you kind of know that when you're looking at a citation that it's not correct. Students are still using AI to do citations. Some of them are correct, but a lot of times it's not citing papers correctly. So students are still struggling with that. So we do need to make sure that we're kind of staying on top of the student to say, what does your professor require? Is it MLA or is it APA? You need to make sure that you understand that me and my class, I want APA citations, and this is how I want it done. So I can kind of monitor that. I do ask for citations as well in their discussion to back up their thoughts here. So that's kind of like all I have here. We thought we would open it up for questions for everybody. Thank you, Megan, again, for monitoring the chat and answering some of the questions. I started to look at that, and then Beth said, next slide. I was like, this is not going to work. I'm focusing in on next slide. I thought I'd pull up the slide with David's contact information if anybody wanted to reach out to him.
And one quick thing I wanted to throw in about Dave is when I tried Visible AI for the first time, he gave all my students a free pilot. So they didn't need to pay that $30. Just throwing that out there. If you want to try it and maybe just want to use it in an assignment or two to see if it works for you, you can do that without giving that students the cost. So just wanted to throw that out.
Is anybody in the audience using Kritik?
Thank you very much, Karen, Elizabeth, and Megan. I know there's been a great, Amy Garbrick in chat said she has used Kritik.
Amy, is there anything you wanted to add to the conversation?
Amy, have you used Kritik or Visible AI? Because I know they're two separate tools right now, right?
Right. I used Kritik in a couple classes, and I really liked it for the kind of peer feedback that it was available to use. I've played with Visual AI, but I did not use it with the class.
Thank you, Amy.
And it is important to know that Kritik and Visible AI are listed as two separate tools in courseware, courseware.psu.edu. So if anybody does want to use either tool, both of those are listed as action needed for authorization at the moment. Awesome. Looks like we have two questions in chat, one from Run Gun. Anyone use Critic or Visible AI in any engineering class? And Kimberly, is this tool browser-based only, or is there a desktop application? Can this be integrated in Canvas?
Well, it can be integrated into Canvas, but I just want to let you know that there has been some hiccups. So I am a squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of person. So my students were having a hard time remembering to go into VisibleAI and to Critic, and they connected the to-do list. And so that to-do list was working for a while, and then it wouldn't work. And come to find out, there was just some kind of coding issue, and they solved it after about 3 months, I think it was in the fall. So hopefully it is solved by now. And I have done presentations on Critic with Amy before in the past, and it is integrated in Canvas. And you can pull your grades over into the grade book if you want to. I typically don't do that. My students are used to having points. And when it pulls it over as a percentages. So I typically do all my grades outside an Excel sheet. You can download your Excel sheet grades, and then you can kind of play with them if you want to, make sure everything is doing right. As far as FERPA goes, issues, it all stays internally. So the information is not shared outside. Critic doesn't sell any of the students' information or anything like that. It does stay internally within the system. The students can use an app as well, and they can also go into VisibleAI on Canvas. I have it set up so it is better for them to go into Canvas first and click on Critic, the Critic link within Canvas, and it shoots them right there pretty seamlessly. We never discussed anything about troubleshooting as well in the presentation. I can show you, I don't believe Megan has anything on one of her slides, but yeah, this one here. So if you look down here, there's this little, carrot kind of icon. This is the help desk. So if students are having major issues with something like the internet got down, or they think the internet's down, which usually that's what they think is happening, but something else might be going on, they can always reach out to Critic through that help desk over here at the bottom line. I like this because I set my deadlines, and now I have no control over the deadlines. They have to make the initiative to contact the helpline in order to have their assignment submitted late. So I have pretty strict deadlines on my due dates, and they have to physically, I'm like, my hands are tied, people. I'm sorry, I can't change the dates on this. It's all internally into Critic. If you have any issues, you need to go and talk to the helpline. That's how I've been doing it. And if anything happens, I have a record of their conversation that they send to us.
And to Angelique's question about how hard is this to get going, I've used it for these 2 semesters, and I have not found that students have had a lot of issues figuring out this platform. It looks very similar to a Canvas assignment. Setup is similar. Because there's these different settings you can set, that takes a little bit of time as an instructor to just figure out where do you want to put these settings, and that's something you experiment with. But I can't think of any student that I've had who's really struggled with just the technology of getting up and running. As a side note, if anybody wanted to Zoom with probably any 3 of us presenters, we can walk you through the details of how we set this up, if that would be helpful to get you up and running.
The only thing that I would say, just speaking as somebody who teaches resume formatting, it's not a sophisticated text editor at its current phase. So I have found that students have a much harder time formatting papers, and I have just decided that I'm okay with that for now. I would like for future versions to have a more sophisticated editor that's easier and more intuitive for students to use. But what I've gained from it is worth all of the tabs and double spacing in the world. So it's mostly okay.
It's just like any other piece of technology. Yeah. You just kind of have to, kind of take a breath and figure out what's going on. Do a little clicking here and there, and you'll be fine. Aiden, I don't know what pack is. So I'm not sure what that is. So I've never used it. So I can't comment on comparing that with VisibleAI. Thank you for your question, though.
Denise had a great question, and she appreciated your acknowledgement of the hostility of being an AI police, which I can also back that as well, because I know some of these AI checkers students have negative thoughts to it. But she asked any comments on how using these tools helps with the emotional aspects of students who don't use AI. And I think that'll be our last question because we have 2 minutes. So Run Gun, we will send any more questions to the presenters, but if any of the presenters wanted to mention or speak to Denise's question, and then we'll wrap up today.
I would love to. English majors hate AI. English majors are so furious at the world for not caring about the special skills they are cultivating. And so what I did in my literature classes, I piloted my literature classes, and I asked my literature students to help me figure out how to use the tool better. And I was like, I want you to be cheaty little assholes. Like, I want you to do anything you can do that feels wrong. And then, like, let's see if I notice. And so they actually helped me refine my sense of what I could and could not rely on it to do. And it was actually really fun for them to play with it. I did have a few students who just refused to use AI features and they would only type in it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Karen, Elizabeth, and Megan, for a great presentation. Thank you for sharing your experiences piloting this tool. For everyone else, this meeting will be recorded and posted either later today or later this week. It will be posted in AI Horizons as well as the chat and some other resources. Any other questions, please reach out to Karen, Elizabeth, or Megan. Keep the conversation going in AI Horizons. And keep an eye out for the August session, which will be posted later this week as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Beth and Megan. Appreciate everything. Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Dream team.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.